Welcome back. Yes, we're at SPAC again, and strap yourself in. This is going to be a while. We have a lot to cover. I'm with Elizabeth Sobel, President and CEO of SPAC. We're going to talk jazz. And, you know, when you think about all different forms of performing arts, think about classical music, roots in Europe, dance, roots in Europe, and everything else, jazz.
Jazz.
You got to get it. You can't say jazz. You have to say jazz. United States of America, homegrown, speaks to immigration, speaks to diversity, speaks to roots, speaks to the blues.
Yeah.
And this year, when we were talking about the artists that are being presented at the Jazz Festival, it really exemplifies what I just said. Let's do the 30,000-foot view first, all right? And then let's get into it.
Okay, so before we go to 30,000, I just want to say that our runway right here is the jazz bar. So it's a
We never leave the jazz bar.
We never leave the jazz bar. This is my favorite place in the whole world. Well, so the 30,000 foot, now we took off.
Okay.
The 30,000 foot is that we have some of the strongest headliners we've had in years, and my idol, Norah Jones, like I just adore her. She's just one of the greatest artists. So there's a lot of excitement. This is the first time she's coming to Jazz Fest
That's
ever.
right.
So that's a huge one. That's Sunday night. Closing act that night is Tremolo and Shorty, who of course went to Skidmore Jazz Institute, has a real connection with Saratoga. And the night before, George Benson is our headliner. So there's so much variety just at that level. And then when you start to dig deeper, there's a tremendous amount of variety and depth. And as you say, cultural, ethnic, immigration, like painting jazz with a big
Yeah, with a big brush. Yeah,
right?
sure, of course.
So, and I have to give kudos to my partner in all of of this, Danny,
sure, of
because
course.
he's just out there listening.
You know, for many, many years he's been involved.
He has.
And he's quite an interesting person. He's a person that works with Elizabeth on deciding the temperament of the festival, what artists are going to appear, if there's an overall theme.
Yeah.
You know, very, very involved in that. You know, speaking about that, this theme, I'm telling you, this year, bring your dance shoes. There are so many interesting rhythmic combinations from so many different cultures that it really just stuns me. Now, before we get into Saturday, it's Saturday and Sunday. Friday night, another collaboration with Downtown and the Chamber to bring jazz downtown.
Absolutely. You know, when I moved here, a little over 2 years ago, I just was stunned by what an amazing jazz city this is. I knew about this festival, which is one of the top festivals in North America, but the Jazz Institute at Skidmore is one of the top jazz institutes in the world. And then beyond that, of course, there's the Jazz Bar, where we now have live music on a regular basis. But literally, Saratoga, the downtown Saratoga, you can hear live jazz basically 365 days a year. Like, where else can you do that in a city of this size? So we wanted to celebrate that. We wanted to get those people who are coming into town on Friday for the weekend Jazz Fest, point them downtown and say, listen, this is a spectacular city. Go downtown, enjoy the riches of the city, which include musical riches, and in this case, jazz riches. So last year we had enormous participation. 32 establishments signed on with us and the Chamber with a commitment to promote live jazz on that Friday night. And so we're doing the same this year. We've already got a ton of people lined up, other establishments to do it again, and I expect an even bigger celebration.
Well, you know, the main thing that I noticed last year about it was that it set the mood for the weekend.
Yes.
You know, and yeah, I know you and I would love to get into this conversation. You hear jazz on the SPAC grounds, and we'll get into some of the artists who paint with the kind of brush that allow your spirits to open up, right? And the combination of being at SPAC and hearing the vibraphone, hearing real silk jazz or real silk voices, your mind expands. It explodes in sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yes.
All right, we got to get into it Saturday. George Benson. Truth be told, I was here the first time.
And that's just incredible.
And the first jazz festival. You know, sometimes I hate to admit that, and other times I'm proud to admit it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Very proud today.
Quick sidebar on that. If you're a guitarist, the Gibson 175, ES 175, a guitar that George Benson made famous, that was actually introduced when he was probably just about born. I remember being backstage and seeing it. and being afraid to touch it, but recognizing that that was George Benson's guitar. Now, a very storied career in jazz. I think it was Breezin' in the late 70s that he broke the barrier and became so popular. Great singer too, by the way. He has a wonderful voice. And he's appearing here. And I just think that that's wonderful that after all these years and all that decades of achievement that he's had and that SPAC has had with the Jazz Festival, he's coming, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that you just touched on something that is so wonderful about being here and a great privilege in terms of programming here is that there's tremendous tradition. And then there's also this hunger for people to discover new talent. And so we're constantly like playing with that push-pull of the tradition and honoring the tradition, but also bringing in the younger generation and artists who are playing upon that tradition and taking it out in different directions. So.
You know, one thing that Benson was always very, very skilled at, he managed to take popular music and give it that wonderful jazz bend, make it more relaxed, get inside the chord work, get inside the structure, the harmonies. Do yourself a favor, he did a version called The Other Side of Abbey Road, where he did the Beatles' Abbey Road album. And it's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
That's great.
You think to yourself, who could follow that? Well, maybe Los Van Van?
Okay, now you of course you had to mention that. So anybody who knows me knows that I'm fanatical about Cuban music, particularly Cuban dance music, and you brought up rhythm, right? And so Los Van Van, I think this is their 50th anniversary.
Yes,
they were the pioneers of what became a kind of music in Cuba called timba.
Yes.
And timba is essentially, like the word timba is a slang word. It basically means taking a bunch of different things and jamming it together, like, you know, peanut butter and jelly and bananas and whatever else you want to throw on the bread, and then eating something really delicious. And it was basically putting together conservatory-trained musicians with sort of Afro-Cuban, the folkloric and the traditional music of Cuba with sort of high-octane rhythms and American sounds. They put drum kit in and electric guitar came in, and so it's just this amazing fusion of things that became like probably the most compelling, high energy, irresistible dance music ever played on the face of the earth.
You do yourself a favor again. I'm going to be saying this a lot, I have a feeling. Go to YouTube and just check them out.
Yeah.
You're right. This is like one of those jambalaya kind of deals,
my God,
right?
yeah.
If it works, throw it in there and see what happens. The smiles on the musicians' faces alone when they realize the collection of sounds and sort of chaos that's being created under this really strong rhythm. That reference that you made, the one that I looked up was Songo.
Songo, yeah, that's what, you know, different. So that was what it was called, or that particular style, and then it sort of evolved into this even higher
Got
octane.
it, okay.
You know, because you had so many. Well, let's not go. Well, I will sit here. I will talk about Cuban music all day if we go down that path. So let's just say, Bon Bon, don't miss it. How about that?
I got news. We bring some dance shoes because you're going to need them.
Totally.
I want to get into some of the other stuff. The James Carter. Now here's somebody who is just one of the fast and furious players. And he put together something called the Organ Trio. Very interesting instrument in this trio, the Hammond B3 organ, the soul of organ jazz and blues.
Yeah.
You know, Jimmy Smith, you would think about on the jazz side. And on the rock side, a wonderful band called the Rascals. Felix Cavaliere used to play the B3.
Listen to you, like pulling all this stuff out.
I just
That's
love
amazing.
this stuff. And this is a wonderful combination of a sax player that can really hammer it out and somebody that can keep up with him. This is a really powerful trio and presents that side of jazz really well, don't you think?
No, it's amazing. Like that's another, like some of this stuff is like Danny hones in on some of these
he knows
artists.
it
He just
so
lives it and
well.
breathes it. He
You know
really
what I mean?
does.
A very interesting thing on another one is the Mercy Project. You know, and I wasn't completely familiar with that one, so I went in and did some research on that. And lo and behold, John Patitucci, one of the most incredible bassists ever. Somebody who was one of my influences when I decided to
really?
start to play the bass.
Interesting.
6-string bass, 8-string bass, 4-string bass. You know, you name it, John Patitucci can play it. And he's part of this wonderful ensemble based around the keyboard player John Coward. And it is, again, this wonderful blend of uber talent in these wonderful configurations that when you put these people together, magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's sort of like, there is this mixture. We had this last year as well of, you know, sometimes you got sort of the band leader with the musicians, and then sometimes you throw just like, I like to call it the team of rivals approach to music making.
That's great.
You know?
That's cool. I know what you mean.
And again, it's just sort of like the balance here of all of that, I think is really spectacular. So you're going to hear a lot of different configurations and energies.
We have time for one more in this, and then we're going to do two-part interview, by the way, is Donna Grantis. Donna Grantis, you might recognize from being in a band by this sort of eclectic rock artist. What was his name? Prince. You know, if you look at Prince and you look at the New Power Generation, she's a guitarist. And what she's bringing to the Jazz Festival this year is very unique, because in other years when there were bands like Weather Report, Return to Forever, this wonderful, really sort of fusion of real high intense jazz and rock music, and that's what she's bringing. To the festival this year.
You know, I would like for you to do all the interviews, all the jazz interviews, like when we get caught, like you are amazing.
I just...
you dig down deep into all
well,
this
it's
stuff.
our music.
I just love it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a break, and we're going to do a part 2 on this, because we didn't even get to Sunday, and we got a lot to talk about. You want to see this interview again? You can head to our website, looktvonline.com. Here we go. 3. That's fantastic.
Wow.
Okay, the snow just came off the building.
It's an avalanche.
It's an avalanche right here in Saratoga.
Yeah, these are the little things that people don't know about our life here at the Hollow Springs in the winter.
Well, that's why we go on location.
I
You know
love it.
that.
I love
Okay.
it.